Alright, day 28, Hellraiser. Rated R, came out in 1987. It's an hour and 34 minutes. Now, before I get into the cast or anything, I need to give you guys all a giant warning that this movie is so gruesome and so messed up that if you don't have the stomach for gore, I mean, granted, it came out in the 80s, but sometimes it seems like gore was the worst in the 80s. Even a lot worse than Terrifier movies if you watch those. But, so I please, go on the air of caution that this movie is completely, it will test your boundaries. And I think I watched this when I was, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9. Yeah, my mom loved horror movies, and in our house it was whatever you wanted if you could handle it. So, let's dive into this. So it was directed by Clive Barker. For anyone who doesn't know, Clive is not very sadistic, but he's very good with horror, especially when he's very passionate about it. And he ended up directing this film. It was, I'm pretty sure his directorial debut, but it was amazing. And it ended up spawning so many sequels. Sequels definitely aren't as good as this, but you know, when a film from the 80s still branches off into today, definitely brings a lot of merit. Now let's introduce the cast a little bit. So the whole plot of this film is that this guy Frank ends up playing with this little box here, and he ends up being circumvented into technically a hell world. And that's kind of how the whole film starts, where we get introduced to Frank, who's played by Sean Chapman, and you know, he's all into this mystical stuff, so he's like, alright, hey, well, let's try this. So, you know, it goes from there to him getting basically torn apart completely by these lovely chains. And then within an instant where he's getting torn apart, ends up being like any normal place. And his brother Larry, who's played by Andrew Robinson, ends up moving in with his, I think it's his second wife, Julia, who's played by Claire Higgins. And we end up getting a bunch of flashbacks that Julia ended up cheating on Larry with Frank, so she has this giant obsession with Frank. And then we get introduced to, Larry's daughter, Kirsty. Now, Kirsty's played by Ashley Lawrence, and Kirsty's one of probably the best final girls that I've seen in so many years, to the point that, she should have been in a lot more horror films than she was. Now, as the movie goes on, we end up figuring out that, you know, because of, in one of the scenes, Larry ends up cutting his hand. It's very squeamish with blood, and he ends up dropping bloodlets in the attic. And that is where the giant scene in the beginning happened, was in their attic. And we realize that Frank is being brought back to life by blood. And so many things happen along this lines that you're trying to figure out, you know, when are we going to see the guy behind me? His name is Pinhead. Now, in the first film, he doesn't really get that name. Actually, I don't think they devised the whole name. I think it was kind of like with Scream with Ghostface. It was just kind of, oh hey, fans decided on it, and it ended up being the name. Now, Pinhead is played by Doug Bradley, and I've met him, and he's probably one of the nicest guys. Definitely kind of creepy to get a picture with him and shake his hand when he just scared the fuck out of me when I was younger. But anyway, we end up finding out that Pinhead is basically the master of the box with his Cenobites, and each Cenobite is very messed up, especially with the special effects. Now, I don't want to give away too much, but Kirsty ends up becoming a complete badass. And the only thing that I don't really like about this film is that it kind of branches off into the second one a little bit. And, you know, to me, a good horror film ends with that film. You know, there might be a a little cliffhanger or something, but when you are trying to do a good horror film, you don't have it branch off into the other, which is why I don't really like the original Halloween. Yes, you can judge me all you want. I love it for what it is, but it would be better if we just ended and didn't just span off in a second. But anyway, like I said, Hellraiser the story's great. It's kind of cheesy when you look at the special effects, but remember, it's 1987, so they only could do so much. Now, definitely give it a watch, because if you're trying to introduce yourself to horror or even deal with, the new age that's coming about, you'll want to understand the old age. And Pinhead is definitely one of those big horror characters that you're gonna want to understand. You're gonna want to figure out where it came from and why everybody loves it. Now, if you are interested in watching it, it's on Pluto TV, Tubi, and Prime Video. Sadly, IMDb only gave it a 6.9 out of 10, which actually isn't bad, especially for a movie that was made back so long ago. I give it a 4 out of 5 because it's a great film. And I think you should watch it. Like I said, go in there with the fact that you may be squeamish a little bit, but I promise you by the end of it, either you'll tolerate it or you're just going to be done. But give it a watch, let me know.